The rain hammered against the windshield as Sarah Collins guided her patrol car through the dark streets of Atlanta. Beside her, Max sat alert in the passenger seat, his amber eyes tracking every shadow that moved in the sodium-lit darkness. 7 years on the force had taught Sarah to trust her instincts, and tonight every nerve in her body was screaming that something was wrong. "Unit 23, we have a 10:34 at the corner of Peachtree and 5th, the radio crackled. Sarah reached for the handset, but before she could respond, her personal phone buzzed. Unknown number. She normally ignored those, but something made her answer. "Officer Collins," she said. "Turn left at the next intersection." The voice was male, British, and carried an authority that made her hand tighten on the steering wheel. "Don't respond on the radio. Just drive." "Who is this?" "Someone who needs to tell you the truth about your father. You have 3 minutes to decide if you want to know who you really are." The line went dead. Sarah's heart pounded. Her father had died when she was 2, a car accident, her mother had always said. There was nothing mysterious about it, nothing hidden, yet the certainty in that voice made her question everything. Max whined softly, sensing her distress. "It's okay, boy," she whispered, making the turn. The GPS coordinates came through as a text message, leading her to an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. Every protocol screamed at her to call for backup, to report this, to do anything except walk into an obvious trap. But the question burned in her mind. Who you really are. She parked in the shadows and checked her service weapon. "Max! With me! Alert!" The dog's posture shifted instantly into working mode, his body a coiled spring of muscle and focus. Together, they approached the warehouse entrance. The door stood slightly ajar, yellow light spilling from within. Sarah pushed it open with her foot, weapon raised. "Atlanta PD, show yourself!" "Put the gun down, Officer Collins. We're on the same side." The man who stepped into the light was in his 60s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. His grey hair was slicked back, and his eyes held the weariness of someone who had seen too much of the world's darkness. But it was his presence that struck her, a coiled danger beneath polished manners, the unmistakable bearing of someone who had killed and would do so again without hesitation. "My name is James Bond," he said simply. Sarah almost laughed. "Right. And I'm Wonder Woman. I assure you I'm quite real. And I'm here because my retirement depends on finding the right person to replace me. Someone with exceptional instincts, unshakable loyalty, and," he glanced at Max, "an unusual partnership that makes them unpredictable. Someone like you. Replace you as what? A delusional guy who thinks he's a fictional spy." Bond smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The designation 007 has been passed down for 70 years. I've carried it for the last 15. Now it's time to pass it on. But first, you need to know why you were chosen, and that requires the truth about your parentage." Sarah's finger tightened on the trigger. "My father died in a car accident. Your mother's husband died in a car accident. He was a good man, and he loved you, but he wasn't your biological father." Bond pulled out a tablet and turned it toward her. "Your real father is this man." The face on the screen was distinguished, powerful, with steel-grey eyes that somehow looked familiar. "Sir Marcus Ashford, Director of MI6. "That's impossible," Sarah whispered. "Your mother met Marcus during his posting in Washington. She was a State Department analyst. They fell in love, but Marcus was already married with a family. When your mother discovered she was pregnant, she made him promise never to contact you. She wanted you to have a normal life, free from his world of shadows and violence. And he just agreed, just abandoned us. He sent money, anonymous support that your mother thought came from her family trust. He watched over you from a distance, ensuring you were safe. And when he saw you become one of Atlanta's finest K9 officers, he realized something. You had inherited his instincts, his courage, and something he never had, the ability to trust absolutely in a partner." Bond nodded at Max. "The 007 program has never had a K9 component. You would be the first. But more importantly, You'd be his legacy. Sarah lowered her gun, her mind reeling. Why tell me now? Why after 33 years? Bond's expression darkened. Because the Syndicate knows. He pulled up another file on the tablet. Surveillance photos, intercepted communications, facial recognition hits. A terrorist organization with cells in every major city, coordinated attacks planned for strategic targets worldwide. The Syndicate has spent 5 years infiltrating global security networks. They've been looking for leverage against people like Marcus, vulnerabilities they can exploit, and 3 weeks ago they found you. DNA samples, birth records your mother sealed but never destroyed, patterns in financial transfers. They know you're Marcus Ashford's daughter. So what? I don't even know him. They don't care about your relationship with him. They care about the scandal. Imagine the headlines. MI6 director's secret American daughter exposed. British intelligence compromised. The political fallout would be catastrophic. Marcus would be forced to resign. The MI6 would be crippled during a critical operation, and the Syndicate would have free rein to execute their next attack. Sarah felt sick. What attack? In 2 weeks, Atlanta hosts a global summit. 23 world leaders, including the President, the Prime Minister, and heads of state from every G20 nation. The security footprint is massive, but the Syndicate has been planning this for years. They intend to use your exposure as a distraction, create a media frenzy that draws resources away from the summit, then strike when everyone's focused on the scandal instead of the threat. Why not just arrest them? Because we don't know who they all are. The Syndicate operates through sleeper cells. No single member knows more than their piece of the puzzle. But there's one person who might be able to help us identify them. Bond paused. You. Me? I'm a K9 officer, not a spy. You're a K9 officer with unmatched instincts, combat training, and a partner who can detect explosives, track suspects, and provide tactical support in ways human agents cannot. You also have a genetic connection to the one man the Syndicate fears most. Marcus has been hunting them for a decade. They've stayed hidden because they're careful, paranoid, and brilliant. But they made one mistake. They underestimated what you're capable of. Sarah looked at Max, who gazed back at her with absolute trust. 7 years together had forged a bond deeper than words. He would follow her anywhere, face any danger, never question or hesitate. If I say yes, what happens? You undergo accelerated training at a classified MI6 facility. Max receives technological upgrades, tactical gear, communication systems, enhanced sensory equipment. You learn espionage tradecraft, advanced combat techniques, infiltration protocols, and then you become 007, the first female agent and the first with a K9 partner to carry that designation. You'll work alongside Marcus, meet the man who's been watching over you your entire life, and together you'll dismantle the Syndicate before they can expose you or execute their attack. And if I say no? Bond's expression was grim. The Syndicate will leak your identity anyway. The scandal will destroy Marcus's career, cripple the MI6, and you'll spend the rest of your life watching world leaders die because you chose safety over duty. And trust me, Officer Collins, once they expose you, they won't stop there. You'll be a target. Max will be a target. Everyone you've ever cared about becomes leverage against the intelligence community. Sarah closed her eyes, the weight of the decision crushing her. Everything she'd believed about herself, her family, her life, it had all been built on a carefully constructed lie. And now, she was being asked to step into a world she'd never imagined, to become something impossible. But when she opened her eyes and looked at Max, the answer was clear. He'd followed her into burning buildings, faced down armed suspects, never once faltered. If there was a threat to innocent lives, if there was a mission that mattered, she couldn't walk away. "When do we start?" she asked. Bond smiled, a real smile this time. "Right now." He pressed a button on his watch, and the warehouse walls suddenly lit up with holographic displays, mission briefings, tactical layouts, personnel files. A door opened in the far wall, revealing a sleek black helicopter waiting beyond. "Welcome to MI6, Agent 007, Bond said. "Your training begins tonight. By the time we're finished, you'll be the most dangerous woman in the world. And the Syndicate will never see you coming." Sarah holstered her weapon and placed a hand on Max's head. "What about my life here? My job, my apartment, my mother? Your captain will be told you've been selected for a federal task force. Your mother will receive regular updates that you're safe but on classified assignment. As for your apartment, it will be maintained as if you're still living there. You're not disappearing, Sarah. You're evolving." She took a deep breath, feeling the old life slipping away and a new one crystallizing around her. Somewhere out there, a man she'd never met watched and waited. A father who had loved her from the shadows. And somewhere else, an enemy plotted to destroy everything and everyone she might come to care about. "Max, heel!" The dog fell into step beside her as she walked toward the helicopter. Behind her, James Bond followed, the legendary 007 escorting his successor into a world of shadows and secrets. As the helicopter lifted off into the rainy Atlanta night, Sarah looked down at the city she'd sworn to protect. Soon, she'd be protecting the entire world, and the truth about who she really was would either save millions of lives or destroy everything her hidden father had built. The choice had been made. There was no turning back now. Agent 07 was born. The MI6 training facility didn't exist on any map. Buried beneath the Scottish Highlands, the compound sprawled across 5 underground levels, each dedicated to transforming ordinary agents into instruments of calculated violence. Sarah had been here for 6 days, and every muscle in her body screamed in protest. "Again!" the combat instructor barked. Sarah wiped blood from her split lip and raised her fists. The instructor, a former SAS operative named Chen, moved like liquid death. He'd dropped her 17 times in the last hour, each fall a lesson in humility and physics. This time, she anticipated his feint, pivoted inside his guard, and drove her elbow into his solar plexus. Chen staggered back, genuinely surprised. "Better," he admitted. "You're finally thinking like someone who wants to survive." Across the training mat, Max worked with his own handler, a German shepherd specialist named Klaus. The Belgian Malinois wore a prototype tactical vest, carbon fiber plates, integrated communication systems, and sensors that could detect explosives, biological agents, and even elevated stress hormones in human targets. "Max, Angriff!" Klaus commanded. The dog launched forward, seizing the padded sleeve with devastating force, but instead of the usual training routine, Klaus activated a remote trigger. A small charge detonated near Max's position, not enough to harm him, but loud and disorienting. Most dogs would have panicked. Max adjusted instantly, released the sleeve, and circled to attack from a different angle. His training with Sarah had taught him to adapt, to think beyond simple commands. "Exceptional," Klaus said, genuine admiration in his voice. "This animal has the instincts of a soldier." "He's not just an animal," Sarah called out, finishing her session with Chen. "He's my partner." She crossed to Max and knelt beside him, checking the vest's fit. The technology was impressive. Microphones that could pick up conversations 50 yards away, cameras that transmitted real-time footage to her heads-up display, even a small dart launcher loaded with tranquilizers for silent takedowns. "You ready for this, boy?" she whispered. Max licked her face, his tail wagging. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. "Agent 07, report to Briefing Room Alpha," a voice echoed through the facility's speakers. "Sir Marcus Ashford is waiting." Sarah's stomach clenched. 6 days of brutal training, and she hadn't seen her father once. Bond had told her Marcus wanted to wait until she'd proven herself, until she understood what being 007 truly meant. Now, apparently, that moment had arrived. She found the briefing room on level 3, a stark chamber dominated by a holographic display table. Marcus Ashford stood with his back to her, studying tactical maps of Atlanta projected in glowing blue lines. He was taller than she'd expected, his posture military straight despite his 60 years. When he turned, those steel-grey eyes, so like her own, studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away. "Officer Collins," he said formally. "Or should I say, Agent 007. "Sarah is fine, sir." She kept her voice neutral, professional. This man was her commanding officer, nothing more. "James tells me you've adapted remarkably well to the training. Top marks in combat efficiency, tactical analysis, and weapons proficiency. Your psychological evaluation shows exceptional stress resilience and moral clarity." He paused. "You're everything I hoped you would be. Is that why you contacted my mother 33 years ago? Because you hoped I'd become a spy?" The barb landed. Marcus's jaw tightened. "I contacted your mother because I loved her, and I've stayed away from you because I loved you. Every enemy I've made in 3 decades of intelligence work would have used you as leverage. Your mother understood that. She chose to protect you by keeping you hidden. She chose to lie to me. She chose to keep you alive." Marcus's voice hardened. "Do you know how many attempts have been made on my life? 17. Do you know how many of my colleagues have lost family members to kidnapping, assassination, blackmail? 32 in the last decade alone. Your mother gave you something I could never provide, a normal childhood, free from the constant shadow of death." Sarah wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the righteousness of her betrayal, but she'd spent 6 days learning what Marcus's world truly looked like. The training simulations had shown her hostage scenarios, torture resistance protocols, the cold mathematics of acceptable casualties. This wasn't a game. People died in this line of work, and the people they loved died too. "Why tell me now?" she asked quietly. Marcus activated the holographic display. Images flooded the space between them, surveillance photos, financial transactions, intercepted communications. "Because the Syndicate has forced my hand. They know about you, which means keeping you hidden is no longer an option. The only way to protect you now is to bring you into the fold, to make you so dangerous that threatening you becomes suicidal." He zoomed in on a series of photos showing a man in his 40s, handsome but with eyes like dead ice. "This is Viktor Kozlov, the Syndicate's operational commander, former FSB, recruited by them after he was disavowed for unauthorized wet work. He's been planning the Atlanta summit attack for 3 years, and he's the one who discovered your identity." "How?" "We're still investigating, but we believe there's a mole inside MI6, someone with access to classified personnel files, someone who's been feeding the Syndicate information about our operations." Marcus's expression was grim. "Your first mission is to find that mole." Sarah studied the tactical maps. "You want me to investigate your own people. I want you to do what I cannot. I'm too close to this, too invested. Everyone knows me, knows my methods. But you're unknown, untested. You can move through the organization and observe without raising suspicion. And with Max's sensory capabilities, you'll be able to detect stress responses, micro-expressions, physiological tells that would escape human observation. You're asking me to spy on spies. I'm asking you to save the summit. If we don't identify the mole before the Syndicate makes their move, 23 world leaders will die, and the revelation of your identity will be lost in the chaos, a footnote to mass murder." Marcus met her eyes. "This is what being 007 means, Sarah. Impossible choices and moral compromises in service of a greater good." Sarah thought about the officers she'd worked with in Atlanta, the trust they'd placed in her. Now she was being asked to extend that same trust to an organization where betrayal could come from anyone, but she'd made her choice 6 days ago. There was no halfway in this world. "What's my cover?" she asked. Marcus smiled slightly, the first crack in his professional armor. "You'll pose as a junior analyst recently transferred from GCHQ. Your job is to review security protocols for the summit and identify potential vulnerabilities. It gives you access to personnel files, communication logs, and operational briefings. You'll work directly with our Atlanta field team. He handed her a tablet containing her new identity. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Signals Intelligence Specialist, Doctorate in Cryptographic Analysis from Cambridge. The background was flawless, backed by years of fabricated academic records and professional references. Memorize everything in that file. You deploy to Atlanta in 48 hours. Marcus hesitated, then added, "There's something else you should know. Your mother isn't aware of what's happening. She thinks you're on a federal task force assignment. I'd like to keep it that way. To protect her? To protect you both. If the Syndicate realizes she's your emotional leverage point, they won't hesitate to exploit it." Sarah wanted to argue, to demand that her mother deserve the truth, but she'd already seen enough of this world to understand. The people you loved became weapons your enemies could use against you. "I want to meet the team I'll be working with," she said instead. Marcus pulled up personnel files. 3 agents would be her primary contacts in Atlanta, all highly decorated, all with impeccable records, but one of them was a traitor, and Sarah had 48 hours to learn how to identify which one. As she studied the files, Max padded over and sat beside her, his presence a reminder that at least one thing in her life remained constant. Whatever happened next, whatever compromises she had to make, he would be there. Marcus watched the interaction with something that might have been longing. "Your mother sent me photos sometimes. Birthdays, graduations, academy ceremonies. I have an entire room in my house filled with your life, a life I was never part of." Sarah looked up, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. "I don't expect forgiveness," Marcus continued. "I don't even expect understanding, but I want you to know that every decision I made, every moment I stayed away, it was because I believed that was the only way to keep you safe. I was wrong, and now you're here in the most dangerous profession in the world, because my enemies discovered what I tried so hard to hide." For the first time since learning the truth, Sarah saw him not as the legendary director of MI6, but as a man haunted by the cost of his choices, a father who had loved his daughter the only way he knew how, from a distance that might as well have been death. "After this mission," Sarah said carefully, "maybe we can talk, not as commander and agent, just as two people trying to figure out what we are to each other." Marcus nodded, his eyes bright. "I'd like that." The moment passed, and the professional masks slipped back into place, but something had shifted between them. A fragile beginning, a possibility of connection. "Dismissed, Agent 07, Marcus said. "Klaus will continue Max's technical training. You have weapons recertification at 1400 hours, followed by infiltration protocols. Make me proud." Sarah stood and headed for the door, Max at her heel, but she paused at the threshold and looked back. "Sir, thank you for trying to protect me, even if it meant staying away." Marcus's expression softened. "Thank you for being strong enough to forgive me. Your mother raised an extraordinary woman." As Sarah left the briefing room, she felt the weight of 2 worlds pressing down on her, the life she'd known and the life she was becoming. Somewhere in Atlanta, a traitor prepared to destroy everything. And somewhere in the shadows, the Syndicate watched and waited, ready to expose the truth that could bring down empires. But Sarah Collins was 007 now, and she was done hiding. Atlanta gleamed under the morning sun, its skyline transformed by security measures for the global summit. Checkpoints dotted every major intersection, snipers positioned on rooftops, and undercover agents blended into crowds. To the casual observer, the city had become a fortress. But Sarah knew better. Fortresses could be breached, especially from within. She sat in the MI6 temporary headquarters, a converted office building 3 blocks from the summit venue. Her cover as Dr. Sarah Mitchell had held perfectly for 5 days. The team had accepted her without suspicion, and Max, introduced as an experimental detection asset, had become the facility's mascot. 3 agents comprised her immediate team. Robert Chen, 42, a tactical operations specialist with 15 years of field experience. His file showed commendations for bravery, a divorce 3 years ago, and a teenage daughter living in London. He drank too much coffee and told terrible jokes, but his instincts in the field were impeccable. Natasha Volkov, 36, a former FSB officer who had defected 8 years ago and proven her loyalty through dozens of successful operations. Cold, efficient, brilliant at reading people, her file noted a younger brother killed by Russian mafia, which had motivated her defection. She watched everyone with calculating eyes, and James Morrison, 29, the youngest of the three, tech specialist, recruited straight from GCHQ after he'd hacked a terrorist network single-handedly. Brilliant, but arrogant, with the casual confidence of someone who'd never truly faced death. One of them was selling secrets to the Syndicate. Sarah's job was to figure out which one before Viktor Kozlov made his move. "Dr. Mitchell, can you review the venue's communication protocols?" Chen asked, sliding a tablet across the conference table. "Something feels off about the frequency allocations." Sarah studied the data, aware that Max was lying beneath the table, his sensors recording everyone's vital signs. Elevated heart rate, micro-expressions of stress, pheromone changes. The dog's equipment could detect lies better than any polygraph. "The allocations look standard," she said carefully. "What concerns you?" "Overlap in the secure channels. If someone wanted to piggyback a signal onto official traffic, these overlaps would provide perfect cover." Chen frowned. "Could be a design flaw, or it could be intentional." Natasha leaned forward. "You're suggesting sabotage? I'm suggesting we verify everything. This summit is the most attractive target in the world right now." Morrison snorted. "You're paranoid, Chen. The comm systems have been triple-checked by 3 different agencies. Nobody's compromising anything." "Famous last words," Sarah murmured, earning a sharp look from Morrison. Max's subtle growl drew her attention. She glanced down and saw the dog's gaze fixed on Morrison, ears slightly back. A tell she'd learned to recognize. Max had detected something off about the young tech specialist. "Max, at ease," she said softly, making it seem like a routine command. But she filed the observation away. Morrison bore watching. The briefing continued for another hour, reviewing security rotations, backup protocols, and emergency evacuation procedures. Everything looked perfect on paper. But Sarah had learned that perfection in intelligence work was often a mask for something rotten underneath. After the meeting dispersed, she found Marcus in his private office, studying satellite imagery of the summit venue. He looked exhausted, the weight of responsibility etched into every line of his face. "Anything?" he asked without looking up. Max reacted to Morrison, elevated stress, defensive body language. But that could be normal for someone his age working their first major operation. Or it could be guilt. Marcus finally met her eyes. "Trust your instincts, and Max's. That dog has proven more reliable than most human agents I've worked with." Sarah hesitated, then asked, "What happens when we find the mole? What's the protocol?" "Arrest, interrogation, prosecution." Marcus's voice was flat. "But if they've compromised the summit, if there's an imminent threat, we do whatever's necessary to extract information quickly." "You mean torture?" "I mean save 23 world leaders." Marcus's eyes hardened. "This is the world we live in, Sarah. Moral absolutes are a luxury we can't afford when millions of lives hang in the balance." Before Sarah could respond, alarms shrieked through the building. Red emergency lights flooded the corridors, and Marcus's phone exploded with incoming calls. "What's happening?" Sarah demanded. Marcus listened to his phone, his face going pale. "Explosion at the primary MI6 facility 2 miles from here. Multiple casualties. It's..." His voice cracked. "It's gone. The entire building is gone." Sarah's blood turned to ice. The primary facility housed support staff, analysts, logistics coordinators, non-field personnel who had no idea they were walking into a death trap. "How many people?" she whispered. 43. Marcus was already moving, grabbing his coat and weapon. "This is the Syndicate's opening move. They're not just planning to disrupt the summit, they're dismantling our entire operational infrastructure." "How did they know where the facility was?" "That location was classified at the highest level." Marcus's expression was grim. Because someone told them, someone with access to our most sensitive information. They rushed to the roof where a helicopter waited. As they lifted off, Sarah could see the smoke rising from the destroyed building, a black pillar against the clear sky, a monument to betrayal and death. The devastation was total. Where the MI6 facility had stood, only twisted metal and burning rubble remained. Emergency responders worked frantically, but Sarah knew they'd find few survivors. This hadn't been a warning shot, it had been an execution. "Max, search!" she commanded, releasing the dog from his tactical transport crate. The Malinois moved through the rubble with purpose, his sensors scanning for survivors, explosives, any evidence that might explain how this had happened. Sarah followed, her mind racing through possibilities. A precisely placed attack. Perfect timing. Knowledge of structural weaknesses. This required detailed intelligence, the kind only available to someone inside the organization. Max stopped at a section of collapsed wall and barked, his alert signal. Sarah scrambled over debris to reach him and found what he'd detected, a fragment of a detonator, partially melted but still intact enough to be traced. "Marcus!" she called out. Her father joined her, examining the device with experienced eyes. "Military grade, Russian manufacture, but modified with techniques I've only seen from one source. The Syndicate. Viktor Kozlov specifically. This is his signature, overkill, combined with theatrical precision." Marcus's jaw clenched. "He's sending a message. He can hit us anywhere, anytime. And he knows everything about our operations." Sarah's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from the temporary headquarters. She opened it and felt her stomach drop. "Morrison's missing. He left the building 10 minutes before the explosion, said he was checking on some equipment. Nobody's seen him since." Marcus and Sarah exchanged looks. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture neither wanted to see. "Could be a coincidence?" Sarah said, but she didn't believe it. "We don't believe in coincidences." Marcus activated his comlink. "All units, locate James Morrison. Detain on site. Consider him potentially hostile." "Ahem." They returned to the temporary headquarters to find Chen and Natasha already reviewing security footage. The tension in the room was palpable. 43 colleagues dead, and one of their own might be responsible. "Found him," Chen said, pulling up camera footage from a parking garage. Morrison left in his personal vehicle at 0842. Cameras tracked him to the industrial district. Then he disappeared. "What's in the industrial district?" Sarah asked. Natasha pulled up a map. "Abandoned warehouses, mostly. Perfect place to hide or meet with contacts." She paused. "Also, perfect place for a safe house." Sarah's mind flashed back to where Bond had first recruited her. Another abandoned warehouse, another secret meeting. The Syndicate was using the same playbook. "Max tracked Morrison earlier today," Sarah said. "He showed signs of stress. At the time, I thought it was nerves. Now, I think it was guilt." Marcus made a decision. "Chen, coordinate with local PD. Lock down the industrial district. Natasha, pull Morrison's complete file. Financials, communications, everything. Sarah, you're with me. We're going to find this traitor and make him tell us what Kozlov has planned." As they geared up, Sarah felt the weight of what was coming. Morrison was barely older than some of the patrol officers she'd worked with in Atlanta. Young, brilliant, with his whole life ahead of him. And if he was the mole, she'd have to look him in the eyes and watch him pay for the deaths of 43 innocent people. Max pressed against her leg, sensing her turmoil. She ran a hand through his fur, drawing strength from his presence. "Whatever happens next," Marcus said quietly, "remember that justice isn't always clean. Sometimes it's brutal and ugly and leaves scars that never heal, but it's still justice." Sarah nodded, checking her weapon. She was 07 now, and day 07 didn't flinch from hard truths. They took 2 vehicles, Sarah and Marcus in one, Chen and a tactical team in another. The industrial district loomed ahead, a maze of shadows and secrets where a traitor waited. As they approached the search zone, Sarah's phone buzzed with another encrypted message. This one made her blood run cold. "It's from Morrison," she said. He says he wants to meet. Just me and Max. Says he has information about the Syndicate's real target. It's a trap, Marcus stated flatly. Probably, but it's also our only lead. Sarah met her father's eyes. I can do this. Marcus was silent for a long moment, the struggle clear on his face. He wanted to protect her, to keep her safe, like he'd tried to do for 33 years. But she wasn't a child anymore. She was an agent, and this was the mission. Take backup, he finally said. Chen's team will maintain a perimeter, and Sarah, he hesitated, be careful. We've already lost too many people today. Sarah nodded and loaded Max into her vehicle. The coordinates Morrison had sent led to Warehouse 17, isolated at the edge of the district. As she drove through empty streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Morrison had been one of them. A colleague, a teammate, someone they'd trusted with their lives, and he'd sold them out, led 43 people to their deaths. The question wasn't whether he'd face justice. The question was what truth he'd revealed before he did. Sarah parked outside Warehouse 17 and checked her equipment one final time. Max sat alert beside her, ready for whatever came next. You ready, boy? Max's answering bark was all the confirmation she needed. Together, they stepped into the warehouse, into the heart of betrayal, searching for answers that would determine whether the summit, and the fragile peace it represented, would survive the next 48 hours. Warehouse 17 stood silent in the fading light, its broken windows like hollow eyes, watching Sarah's approach. Max moved beside her, every sense alert, his tactical vest recording everything. Somewhere nearby, Chen's team maintained their perimeter, but in this moment Sarah felt utterly alone. "Morrison," she called out, "I'm here, just me and Max like you asked." For a long moment, nothing. Then a figure emerged from the shadows, James Morrison, looking haggard and frightened, nothing like the arrogant tech specialist she'd worked with for the past 5 days. "Dr. Mitchell," he said, his voice shaking. "Or should I say Sarah Collins, daughter of Marcus Ashford, the new 007. Sarah's hand moved toward her weapon, but Morrison raised his empty hands. "I'm not armed, and I didn't come here to fight." He laughed bitterly. "I came here to confess before they kill me." They? The Syndicate? Victor Kozlov doesn't leave loose ends. I was useful when I could provide intelligence, but now that the bombing's done, I'm just a liability. He'll have me eliminated within hours. Morrison's eyes were haunted. 43 people, God, I didn't know they'd hit the facility. I thought it would just be data theft, surveillance, not mass murder. Then why did you do it? Sarah demanded, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Why betray everything you swore to protect?" Morrison sank against a concrete pillar, looking like he'd aged a decade in the past few hours. "My sister, Emily, she's 12 years old and she has leukemia. The treatments cost more than I make in 5 years, and insurance wouldn't cover the experimental therapy she needed. I was desperate." He pulled out his phone and showed Sarah a photo. A young girl in a hospital bed, pale and fragile, smiling bravely at the camera. "Kozlov approached me 6 months ago. He knew everything about my situation, offered to pay for Emily's treatment. All I had to do was share some information. At first, it was harmless. Personnel schedules, routine security reports. Then it escalated. He wanted facility locations, operational plans, classified intelligence. By the time I realized what I'd become, Emily was in remission, and I was in too deep." Max growled softly, and Sarah felt the conflict tearing through her. Morrison had committed treason, gotten people killed, but he'd done it to save his sister. Where was the line between love and loyalty, between family and duty? "Tell me about the summit," she said. "What's Kozlov's real target?" "That's the thing. I don't know." Morrison stood, frustration evident. "The bombing was just phase 1. Phase 2 happens during the summit, but Kozlov compartmentalized the operation. I only knew my piece. But I intercepted something, a fragment of an encrypted communication. It mentioned the daughter and maximum exposure. Sarah, I think they're not just planning to attack the summit. They're planning to expose you. I already know that. Bond told me weeks ago. No, you don't understand. Kozlov wants more than a scandal. He wants to capture you alive, broadcast your identity to the world, and force Marcus to choose between saving his daughter and stopping the attack. Morrison's voice dropped. He's turning you into leverage. Before Sarah could respond, Max's ears pricked forward. His body tensed, a low growl building in his throat. Sarah trusted that instinct. Something was wrong. "Get down!" she shouted, diving behind cover. The explosion ripped through the warehouse's west wall, sending debris flying. Sarah's ears rang as she rolled to her feet, weapon drawn. Through the smoke, figures moved. Tactical gear, suppressed weapons, professional coordination. The Syndicate had found them. "Max! Guard!" Sarah commanded, returning fire. The Malinois launched forward, taking down the first hostile with devastating efficiency. But there were too many, and they were too well trained. This wasn't a random cell. This was Kozlov's elite team. Morrison tried to run, but a burst of gunfire cut him down. He collapsed, blood spreading across the concrete, his confession dying with him. Sarah fought with everything her training had given her, but she was outnumbered 5-1. Where was Chen's backup team? They should have responded the moment the explosion hit. Then she understood. The Syndicate had known about the perimeter. They'd neutralized Chen's team first, isolated her, and now they were closing in for the capture. "Max, heal," she ordered, falling back toward the exit. But as they reached the doorway, a net gun discharged. The weighted mesh caught Max in mid-stride, tangling his legs and bringing him down. He yelped in surprise and fury, thrashing against the restraints. "Max!" Sarah spun back, but a stun round hit her shoulder and her right arm went numb. Her weapon clattered to the ground. 3 operatives converged on Max, jabbing him with a tranquilizer dart even as he fought with savage determination. The dog's struggles grew weaker, his eyes finding Sarah one last time before the drugs took him. "No!" Sarah lunged forward, but strong arms grabbed her from behind. She fought like a demon, but more hands joined in, overwhelming her through sheer numbers. A figure stepped through the smoke, tall, cold-eyed, with the predatory grace of a born killer. Viktor Kozlov, in the flesh. "Agent 007, he said in accented English. "Or should I call you Sarah? I feel we've become so well acquainted these past weeks." "If you hurt him," Sarah spat blood, still struggling against the operatives holding her. "The dog. He's worth more to us alive. Anthropic has never seen a K9 with such advanced technology. We'll study him, reverse engineer his equipment, perhaps create our own version." Kozlov smiled coldly. "And then we'll send him back to your father in pieces, one body part at a time, until Marcus Ashford breaks." Rage exploded through Sarah. She broke partially free, managed to drive her elbow into one operative's throat, but Kozlov moved with blinding speed, driving a fist into her solar plexus. She collapsed, gasping. "I admire your spirit," Kozlov said conversationally. "Marcus's daughter every bit as fierce as her father. But spirit without wisdom is just recklessness. You walked into my trap knowing it was a trap. That's not courage, that's stupidity." He gestured to his team. "Load the dog. The woman comes with us. Marcus will receive instructions within the hour. His daughter's life for the summit's security codes. Let's see if the legendary Director of MI6 loves his newly discovered child enough to sacrifice thousands of innocent lives." Sarah tried to rise, but another stun round hit her leg. Paralysis spread through her body as they dragged her toward a waiting van. Through dimming vision, she saw them loading Max's unconscious form into a separate vehicle, his tactical vest already being removed and examined. She'd failed Marcus, failed the mission, failed her partner, everything she'd trained for, everything she'd become, and it hadn't been enough. As consciousness faded, she heard Kozlov's final words. "Tell your father I said hello. Tell him the daughter he tried so hard to hide will be the weapon I use to destroy everything he's built." Darkness claimed her. Sarah woke to the sound of her own heartbeat amplified through speakers. She was strapped to a chair in a concrete room, bright lights making it impossible to see beyond their glare. Her weapons and equipment were gone, replaced by the cold certainty that she was completely at Kozlov's mercy. "Awake at last," a voice said from beyond the lights. "Good. We were beginning to worry the stun rounds had caused permanent damage. That would have complicated our plans. Where's Max?" Sarah's voice was hoarse but steady. "What have you done with him? Your partner is safe, for now. Whether he remains that way depends entirely on your cooperation and your father's." Kozlov stepped into the light, and Sarah saw he was holding a tablet. On it, live video showed Max in a cage, still unconscious but breathing. Relief flooded through her, quickly followed by new fear. They had her greatest weakness, the one thing she couldn't sacrifice. "Here's how this works," Kozlov continued. "In 6 hours, the global summit begins. World leaders will gather in what they believe is the most secure venue on Earth. Marcus Ashford has spent months ensuring every possible threat has been neutralized." He smiled coldly. "But Marcus doesn't know that we've already infiltrated the venue. Our people are in place, waiting for the signal. The only thing that can stop the attack is the emergency lockdown code. A code only Marcus possesses. He'll never give it to you, won't he? Let's find out." Kozlov pressed a button and a screen lowered from the ceiling. "Your father is watching this broadcast right now. Hello, Marcus. I believe you recognize your daughter." Sarah stared at the camera, knowing Marcus was seeing her restrained and helpless. The shame of her failure burned, but she forced herself to meet the lens without flinching. "You have a choice, Director Ashford," Kozlov announced. "Give me the lockdown code, and I'll release your daughter unharmed. Refuse, and she watches as I execute her partner before I start removing her fingers one by one. And after she's broken, after she's told me everything she knows about MI6 operations, I'll kill her anyway, but at least you'll have the satisfaction of knowing you chose principle over her life." The room fell silent except for Sarah's heartbeat, still echoing through the speakers. A reminder of how fragile life was, how easily it could be stopped. Kozlov checked his watch. "You have 30 minutes to decide, Marcus. 30 minutes to choose between duty and blood. Let's see which one matters more." He left Sarah alone with the lights and her failure, the image of Max unconscious in a cage burning in her mind. But through her despair, a spark of defiance remained. She was 007. She'd trained for impossible situations, and somewhere in this facility, Max was alive and waiting for her. Morrison had died trying to redeem himself. 43 people had died because of the Syndicate's ambitions. Sarah refused to let those deaths be meaningless. She tested her restraints, cataloguing weaknesses. The chair was bolted to the floor, but the straps had a half-inch of play. Her left hand could almost reach the buckle if she dislocated her thumb. It would hurt. But pain was temporary. Failure was forever. Sarah Collins closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to plan her escape. Pain exploded through Sarah's left hand as she forced her thumb out of joint. Tears streamed down her face, but she bit back the scream, refusing to give Kozlov the satisfaction. The loosened strap slipped free, and she immediately went to work on the remaining restraints. 27 minutes left. Her tactical training kicked in, overriding the agony. She freed her right hand, then her legs, and dropped from the chair into a combat crouch. The room was bare except for the camera still broadcasting to Marcus and a single door, locked from the outside. But Sarah hadn't spent 6 weeks training with MI6's best without learning a few tricks. She examined the door's hinges, interior mounted, accessible. Using the buckle from her restraints as a makeshift tool, she began working the pins free. Somewhere in this facility, Max was waiting. And somewhere, Kozlov was counting down the minutes until he broke Marcus Ashford. Neither was going to happen. The first hinge pin came free, then the second. Sarah eased the door from its frame, slipping into a dimly lit corridor. 2 guards stood at the far end, their attention focused on a monitor showing the empty interrogation room. It would take them seconds to realize she'd escaped. Sarah needed those seconds. She moved like a shadow, closing the distance before they could react. The first guard went down from a strike to his carotid artery. The second managed to raise his weapon, but Sarah disarmed him with a joint lock that left him gasping on the floor. "Where's the dog?" she hissed, her hand on his throat. "Sub-level, research bay," he choked out. Sarah struck him unconscious and took his weapon, a suppressed pistol and a radio. She activated the radio just long enough to hear Kozlov's voice giving orders, then smashed it. No point letting them track her. The facility was larger than she'd expected, a maze of corridors and secured doors, but the signs were in Russian and English: laboratory, storage, research bay. She followed them deeper, moving fast but careful. 15 minutes left. She found Max in a sterile room, surrounded by computer equipment, his tactical vest disassembled on a nearby table. 2 technicians were examining the technology, completely absorbed in their work. They never saw Sarah coming. She cleared the room in seconds, then rushed to Max's cage. The dog was waking from the tranquilizers, groggy but alive. When he saw Sarah, his tail wagged weakly. "Hey, boy," she whispered, working the cage lock. "I know you're tired, but I need you ready to run." Max stood on unsteady legs, shaking off the drugs. Sarah quickly reassembled his tactical vest, checking that all systems were functional. The camera feed would be invaluable for what came next. She activated her earpiece, the one piece of equipment Kozlov's men hadn't found, and switched to Marcus's encrypted channel. "Father," she said quietly, "I'm out. I have Max. Don't give Kozlov anything." Marcus's response was immediate, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "Sarah, thank God. What's your status?" "Armed and angry. Where's Chen? I need backup." Chen's team was ambushed, but they survived. They're tracking your location now through Max's GPS signal. ETA 12 minutes. The summit starts in 13. I need to stop Kozlov before then. Negative. Extract and let us handle this. You've done enough. With respect, sir, this is my mission. I'm 007, and I don't leave jobs unfinished. Sarah checked her weapon. Max and I are ending this, now. She cut the connection before Marcus could argue, because she knew he'd try to protect her, but she didn't need protection. She needed justice for Morrison, for the 43 people who died in the bombing, for every person the Syndicate had hurt. Max pressed against her leg, fully alert now. They moved together through the facility, following the sound of voices toward what had to be Kozlov's command center. 8 minutes. They found it behind a reinforced door, a large room filled with monitors showing the summit venue from multiple angles. Kozlov stood at the center, surrounded by a dozen operatives, all focused on the screens. Sarah counted the odds. 13-2. Not great, but she'd faced worse during training. She activated Max's tactical systems. Camera recording, audio pickup, everything. Whatever happened next, MI6 would have documentation. Then she kicked open the door. "Kozlov!" she shouted, weapon raised. "It's over!" The room erupted in chaos. Operatives reached for weapons, but Sarah was already moving. She dropped 3 in the first 5 seconds, using the doorframe as cover. Max launched forward, taking down 2 more with brutal efficiency. But Kozlov was faster than his men. He grabbed a remote detonator and held it high. "One more step, and I detonate the charges at the summit. 23 world leaders die in the next second." Sarah froze, weapon aimed at his head. "Bluff. You haven't had time to plant explosives. Morrison died before he could give you the access codes." Kozlov smiled coldly. "Morrison was never the only mole. Did you really think I'd put all my faith in one terrified boy trying to save his sister? No, Agent 007. I've had people inside the security detail for months. The explosives are in place. The only question is whether you're willing to gamble thousands of lives on your certainty that I'm lying." Sarah's finger tightened on the trigger. He was right. She couldn't risk it, but she also couldn't let him walk away. "Marcus!" She sub-vocalized into her earpiece. "Are the summit charges real?" Scanning now. Negative. No explosive signatures detected. He's bluffing. Sarah smiled. "You lose, Kozlov." She fired. The detonator flew from Kozlov's hand, shattered by her shot. He dove for cover, shouting orders in Russian. The remaining operatives opened fire, and the room became a war zone. Sarah and Max fought like they'd trained, a perfect team, each anticipating the other's moves. She provided covering fire while Max flanked, taking down operatives from unexpected angles. The tactical vest's sensors fed her targeting data, giving her split-second advantages. 4 operatives down, 3, 2. Then Kozlov emerged from cover with a combat knife, moving with the skill of a Spetsnaz veteran. He was on Sarah before she could react, knocking her weapon away and driving her back against a control console. "You should have stayed hidden," he snarled, the knife flashing toward her throat. Sarah caught his wrist, but he was stronger, forcing the blade closer. Her injured hand throbbed, her strength failing. Then Max hit Kozlov like a missile. The terrorist went down under 100 pounds of fury and trained aggression. Kozlov screamed as Max's jaws closed on his knife arm, the blade clattering away. Sarah rolled to her feet and recovered her weapon. "Max, out!" she commanded. The dog released Kozlov and backed away, still in attack posture. Kozlov clutched his mangled arm, blood soaking through his tactical gear. "It's over," Sarah said, weapon trained on him. "The Syndicate is finished." "The Syndicate is an idea," Kozlov spat. "Kill me, and 10 more will take my place. You've won nothing." "Maybe, but I've saved 23 world leaders and stopped your plan to expose me." Sarah smiled grimly. "Actually, about that exposure." She activated Max's broadcasting systems, patching into the summit's media feed. Kozlov's eyes widened in horror as he realized what she was doing. "My name is Sarah Collins," she said to the camera, knowing her words were being transmitted to every news network covering the summit. "I'm the daughter of Sir Marcus Ashford, Director of MI6. For 33 years, my identity was kept secret to protect me from people like Viktor Kozlov, terrorists who would use innocent lives as leverage." She walked closer to the camera, Max at her side. "Kozlov planned to expose my identity as a way to create scandal and distraction. He wanted to make my existence a weakness, something shameful that needed to be hidden. But I'm done hiding. I'm done letting fear dictate who I can be." Sarah gestured to the captured terrorist. "I'm a K9 officer from Atlanta. I'm the newest agent designated 007, and I'm proud to be Marcus Ashford's daughter. He made difficult choices to keep me safe, choices that cost him a relationship with his child. But his sacrifice wasn't weakness, it was love. And today, that love helped save thousands of lives." She looked directly into the camera. "The Syndicate wanted my identity to be a scandal. Instead, I'm making it a promise to every terrorist, every criminal, every person who thinks they can threaten innocent lives. We're coming for you, and we won't stop until you're brought to justice." Sarah ended the broadcast as explosion sounds echoed from above, Chen's team breaching the facility. Within minutes, the command center was flooded with MI6 agents securing Kozlov and his surviving operatives. Marcus was the last through the door. Father and daughter locked eyes across the chaos, years of separation and sacrifice crystallizing into a single moment of understanding. Then Marcus crossed the room and pulled Sarah into a fierce embrace. "You magnificent, terrifying woman," he whispered. "You just rewrote every protocol in the intelligence handbook." "Learn from the best," Sarah replied, her voice muffled against his shoulder. When they separated, Marcus knelt beside Max, checking the dog for injuries. "And you, my friend, are a legend. Every K9 unit in the world will be trying to match what you've accomplished today." Max's tail wagged, accepting the praise as his due. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in MI6 headquarters in London, wearing formal dress uniform. The ceremony was small, only essential personnel, no press, no publicity. That wasn't how the intelligence world worked, but it was real. "Agent 007, Marcus said formally, pinning a medal to her chest. "For exceptional courage in the face of overwhelming odds, for tactical brilliance in dismantling a terrorist network, and for redefining what it means to serve Queen and country, I hereby recognize your actions as exemplary of the highest standards of British intelligence." The assembled agents applauded. Chen was there, his arm in a sling, but his smile genuine. Natasha gave a rare nod of approval. Even Bond himself had come out of retirement to witness the ceremony. "You've done something remarkable," Bond told her afterward. "You've made 007 your own, not by following the template, but by breaking it completely." Sarah smiled. "Someone once told me that being 007 meant making impossible choices. I just chose differently than expected, and the world is better for it." That evening, Sarah and Marcus had dinner in his private residence. Nothing fancy, just takeout and conversation. Max sprawled on the floor, enjoying the rare moment of relaxation. "Your mother called," Marcus said carefully. "She saw the broadcast. She knows everything now." "Is she angry?" "Terrified, proud, furious, and relieved all at once. She wants to meet me, properly, I mean, after all these years." Marcus looked vulnerable in a way Sarah had never seen. "I don't know if I'm ready for that. You kept me safe for 33 years by staying away," Sarah said. "Maybe it's time to try keeping people safe by staying close instead." Marcus smiled. "When did you become so wise?" "Somewhere between getting captured and broadcasting state secrets on live television." They laughed together, the sound filling a house that had been silent too long. Later, as Sarah prepared to leave, Marcus stopped her. "About your next assignment. There's a situation developing in Prague. Requires someone with your specific skill set. Interested?" Sarah looked at Max, who perked up at the prospect of new adventure. "What do you think, boy? Ready to save the world again?" Max barked once, affirmative and enthusiastic. "I'll take that as a yes," Sarah said. "Send me the briefing." As she walked out into the London night with Max at her side, Sarah Collins, daughter, agent, partner, felt the weight of her choices settle comfortably on her shoulders. She was 07, the first woman, the first K9 handler, the first agent to choose truth over secrecy when it mattered most. And somewhere out there, new threats were emerging, new missions waited. Sarah smiled. Let them come. The end